Hello, Dale McDermott here with the CGLCC, and welcome to the 2020 Digital LGBT+ Global Business Summit. Before we get started on the session, CGLCC would like to recognise our presenting sponsor, TD Bank Group, along with all of our gold and silver sponsors and all of our sponsors for helping us to make this event happen. We would also like to recognise our translation partner, AI Media, for enabling us to deliver live caption translation in 3 languages, English, French and Spanish, and you can access those using the links below in the description box. I'd also like to draw your attention to the left-hand side of your screen to the networking and exhibit hall tabs, where over the course of the next 5 days you can connect with LGBT+ businesses, corporations and each other to help drive that power of connection. And finally, if you do like the content we are producing, please feel free to make a financial contribution using the donate link in the description box below. Thank you, and enjoy your session.
Greetings, everybody. Thank you so much for your patience. We had some tech issues on the back end, which we take responsibility for, and glad to have you all. To the CGLCC, fantastic, amazing job pulling off this virtual event. It's been phenomenal. And grateful to be included from south of your border. Not sure we deserve to be invited many places globally at this moment in history, but we are grateful and thankful to be here and to talk about something that we care deeply about, which is the business case for supplier diversity. And before I jump into that, I want to take a step back to be able to set the stage of how it came to be that we got into the business of showing the impact of the great work that many of you on this call are doing. And it started long before Hootology and before I sold out and went to business school. And for about a decade, I worked in social services, as did many of our team, either in the nonprofit, social services, and or psychology sector. And during my personal time in social services, I was what my Republican parents were disappointingly calling a bleeding heart liberal. And I'm grateful that business school didn't knock that out of me, but it did provide the balance, because my answer to everything at that moment in time was that if it was the right thing to do, it being the right thing to do was justification alone. And through the evolution and how we came to evolve into Hootology as combining the art and science of decision making really has that balance and is the lens that we look at through of showing the impact of the great work that supplier diversity is. With that, I wanted to go ahead and preemptively apologize. We have some wonky formatting on our slides. If you know us, we care deeply about how our visuals look. So there will be some glitches along the way, and then please take our apologies for that. We will happily make this available with all of the beautiful formatting that exists on the back end. Hootology as a whole, every time we start a project, which is oftentimes with a large company or a global organization, we start with a really high level question. So something big and meaty and heavy is at stake, but we really simplify it down as we did with our supplier diversity question. So for example, we might work with, on the left, a Fortune 50 tech company, and the question in that particular case was, what should our strategy be for a global rollout of a new technology? In the middle, we were working for a large pharmaceutical organization, looking to understand their question, which was, how do I connect with senior executives in the pharmaceutical industry across 7 different countries in a meaningful way? Big question, big complex thing to solve, but simple, high-level question. Or something like working with one of the top insurance providers in the US to help them understand different multicultural groups to be able to connect more meaningfully with them. And when we got certified through the NGLCC and through WeBank, we started to notice a gap between what we were seeing and then what we were hearing. And what we were seeing is how hard supplier diversity professionals were working week after week, month after month at all of the conferences, representing their corporations so wonderfully and doing something supplier diversity that is beyond the right thing to do. But then we started to hear some of the frustrations with budgets being cut, frustrations with their team size being too small, frustration with the hours that were needed to work to get everything done, to do their jobs as well as if they were doing them. And that's where we started to realize, we're kind of research nerds, so all of our questions are not always the best cocktail party types of conversations. And so we were a bit confused, and we would say, well, how are you showing your impact? Because obviously this thing is amazing and is so powerful, but what are you doing to measure the impact of supplier diversity? And we got one of three answers typically. We're tracking our awards, which is awesome. All of you on this call and every supplier diversity professional I have met deserves an award for their work. But that's a really, really myopic impact in terms of that awareness of that award and that work that's being done. It's really the supplier diversity community that's reaching. Others would say we're tracking our spend, which is fantastic. And we all know what that means. It means that additional dollars are being spent with minority-owned businesses. But we also know that that's inversely correlated with what most corporations are looking to do, which is to spend less in each of their respective divisions. And then some were doing economic impact, which is also fantastic. But economic impact is what's looking at the impact external to the walls of the corporation, on jobs created, money being created to circulate salaries and whatnot. Fantastic measurement, but not that one measurement that most C-suite folks that we've met care about, which is the impact on their bottom line or their purchase funnel. And so that's where what we're going to talk about today comes in, which is the Supplier Diversity Impact Indicator, and sharing for the first time some of our global findings, or excuse me, our findings from the first 3 years of our study that you can hopefully start to use in your conversations and in your internal discussions. So let's start with a quick poll. So this is one of those massive graphic errors that's going to hurt our soul for many, many weeks. Let me launch this. Christine, it's not giving me the option. Do you want to see if you're able to do that? Well, we had some great polls for you. We will trudge forward. I will tell you what the poll is and let you internally have the experience. So our first question was going to be a true or false statement. And it was going to be true or false, companies need to make money to stay in business. Give you a second. I think obviously that answer is going to be true. And really, I'm going to flip back over. Christine, I got it. Corporations can't stay in business. Trung, thank you for your note. I got it. We're good. We're just going to roll. We're going to wing it. We're going to make it all happen. No polls, but I'm going to talk you through them with this graphically messed up presentation, and we're going to all survive. It's the worst thing that happens to us today. We're doing all right. So true, of course, Hootology has to make money to stay in business. Large corporations have to make money. They have to make money before they can do all the great things that are the right thing to do. And so with that, we started with that same high-level question to go about answering the question that was needed to be able to show the impact on the brand's bottom line for the impact of supplier diversity. So similar to those other projects that I had mentioned, our high-level question was really simple for this big question, and it's how do we show the impact of our supplier diversity and diversity initiatives on our brand's bottom line to prove the business case? So that's where we started. And what I'd like to do is start with the end of the story. So we knew that the kind of the main top metric that we were heading for was looking at the impact on purchase behavior of that brand's products and services based on supplier diversity awareness. So we're just going to jump to the end of the story and give you what that metric has been over the course of our 3 years of doing this particular study to show you that number in aggregate and then back out of there. What I will do is admit our bias, our arrogance, and that this study so far has just been done in the United States. And so we're looking at US data, and we are ready and willing to expand into Canada and any other parts of the globe when the timing is right. But for now, we're looking at US-based data. I will also allow you to suspend disbelief for at least until we get to the Q&A section, which I will make sure that we still have time for. And that is to tell you that I will play devil's advocate in the meantime. I will kind of throw the darts at this and let you just kind of hopefully sit back and just take in the information, so then we can, again, have the Q&A later. So that the end metric, what we ended up with is this. first time seen in public audiences. People who are aware of a specific brand's supplier diversity initiative are 40 percentage points higher, which is massive in the research world, than those who are unaware of that particular brand's supplier diversity initiative to purchase their products and services. Pretty darn cool. And pretty darn amazing, because when we started this thing, we didn't know if it was going to be positive, right? We wanted to attempt to measure it, but we didn't know what the results were going to be. And we certainly didn't expect to see them so universally amazing across all of the brands that we've looked at. So this number is an aggregate. Obviously, it varies brand to brand and industry by industry, but there's a wide variety of industries included in this particular metric. So pretty powerful stuff. Next poll question, and this is for each of you to what we call at Hootology shavassanate on internally, and that's into our disdain of business terms and slang. And so it's our response to marinate. We're a bunch of yogis, and so we're going to shavassanate on it. And our question here was going to be, what percentage of people in the U.S. Consumers, U.S. population, do you think would say that it's important that corporations value diversity? So our options were something like 5%, 13%, 25%, and let's say 60%. So think for a second. I can't tell you what those aggregate numbers would be, but the actual answer that we're seeing, 25%. Thanks, Rose. I'm going to slide down. Here we go. It's not going to let me do that. Is 61%. So 61% of people in the US think it's important that corporations value diversity. Pretty cool thing to know, and pretty cool thing as a starting place as we start to understand what the impact of supplier diversity can and will be. And the reason we wanted to include a much broader base of information is because we know that supplier diversity might still have a long way to go in terms of awareness and in terms of impact. And so we wanted to start to isolate the impact of diversity and a corporation being perceived as valuing diversity as well, to give supplier diversity professionals a heck of a lot of information to be able to have conversations with and build that story versus jumping to that kind of top metric. All right. When we started this, and when we started talking to those of you on this call who we were having early conversations with and doing our own qualitative research before we launched this project, some of the pushback we got is, no one knows about supplier diversity. I've been working in this field for 30 plus years, and even the people in my own corporations don't know what supplier diversity is. And so we wanted, of course, to be able to get that accurate number of what the awareness was as a starting point. So our question here was going to be, what percentage of the US population do you think is aware of supplier diversity? Give you some options. 0.5%, 1%, 4%, 25%. So think for a second what you think that answer would be for supplier diversity, the awareness of supplier diversity initiatives. And wouldn't you, lo and behold, James from Starbucks gets it right at 4%. So across the US, 4% of people, 4% of consumers are accurately aware of what supplier diversity is. So we can tell you that we did a very, very rigorous way to be able to calculate what actual awareness meant. We didn't just ask people, are you aware of what supplier diversity is, and take their word for it. We had a stepped process to be able to get at that number. And what we can tell you is no one particular supplier diversity initiative got higher than about 1.5% awareness of their own supplier diversity initiative, but 4% awareness overall of what supplier diversity is. So before that is discouraging, we actually think that that's okay news, and let me tell you why. Shaylin, who is one of the Hootology partners, and I met probably 15 years ago at a global market research agency. And in my youth and ignorance, I made a comment about a study that we were doing. It actually was for Intel a long time ago. And it was a global study of 16 different countries looking at the awareness of and perception around about 10 different technologies that they were considering rolling out. And quarter after quarter after quarter, the awareness and perception of this one particular technology was at 2%. And I remember saying to Shay, like, why do they even continue tracking this one thing? Nobody cares about it. Nobody knows about it. And let's just stop spending money to track it. Well, that technology at 2% was voice over IP, which became Skype, which became Zoom, which awareness is probably as close to 100% across the globe as you could get at this particular moment in time. And what Intel knew then, and a lot of large corporations know, is that understanding the moment in time and the impact of that particular group helps determine that strategy of when to roll it out, why to roll it out, and how to communicate that rollout so there's the more likelihood for success. And recently, Target Supplier Diversity professional, I'm not sure if she's on, Jessica Lozano Williams, said in a public presentation that data is the language of corporations. And that's why we think this 4% number is a great thing to know and to be able to track year over year, which we are going to be doing. So with that 4%, what we wanted to look at is the impact of that 4% on key purchase metrics. So this is where you saw earlier, and we shared that 69% number. Of that 4% who are aware, 69% purchase products and services from brands that they know have a supplier diversity initiative, compared to that 29% that we saw. Pretty exciting stuff. Now, through the process of the study, we were able to also educate people about what supplier diversity was. We first captured their awareness, and we were able to use that for analysis later on. But then we said, okay, cool, we have your answers, thank you. FYI, here's what supplier diversity is. So we did a trial awareness to see what that impact was. So we're kind of predicting what can and will happen once more people become aware of supplier diversity. And what we found is similar to that 61% number that we saw earlier for the amount of people who believe that it's important that corporations value diversity. Probably the same people, 62%, say that supplier diversity programs are important once they know what they are. So this is of the entire US. 62% of people have said, hey, I just learned about the supplier diversity thing. That's really cool. I like it. So what this means, right, to depict kind of the larger picture of what we're trying to do and what we're trying to understand to help rise the tide of supplier diversity is shown in this particular graphic here. So there's 100 icons, and each one represents 1% of the US population. So what we talked about, 4% of people are aware of supplier diversity. And understanding the impact on a lot of different key purchase funnels, not just purchase, is something that we're looking at and able to do at this particular point in time. But then we also looked at that 61% who say that diversity is important for corporations, and also looked at the impact and the increase in brand favorability, consideration, and market share on those 61%. So just getting people aware and to believe and know how much a corporation values diversity is also crucial, and also something that's able to be included in the story. The good news is that with an additional 1% lift in awareness of supplier diversity, that's an additional 2.5 million people. So for a specific brand, we're able to say, if you can lift your supplier diversity awareness by 1%, that will lead to X number of new people considering your product, X number of new people buying your product, and X number of people of thinking more favorably about your brand. I'm cognizant about our time with our late start, so I'm not sure if we're going to get cut off here at the 30 minutes, but I'm going to try and fly through and probably click into Q&A mode earlier than expected, but we're happy to have this conversation in a more ongoing manner at any time. So one of those darts I want to throw, and to be able to kind of share what we think is pretty magical, even though we've been in the research world for a really long time, is we did something different this year. The goal for the SDII and to measure the business case of supplier diversity was intended to be annual. Okay, one point in time, measure the impact, introduce new strategies, grow the number, and continue to track over time how that 4% number and how all of these individual metrics grow. So we field the study in February, and then we all know how March kind of changed the world. And so what we did is we had a lot of corporations who wanted it in February, but weren't quite ready and wanted to wait one more year before they opted in. So we offered another wave in April. So in February of 2020, these are the numbers that you all now know. 61% of people think it's important that corporations value diversity, 4% awareness, and 62% for supplier diversity. We talked to 3,000 people in February, completely balanced by the US population in every direction you could possibly imagine. And then, let me get me down here. When we did this again in April with an entirely new 3,000 people, also balanced to represent the US population, but no overlap in the humans that answered the survey, we got 61% importance of corporations valuing diversity, 4% awareness of supplier diversity, and 62% of supplier diversity being perceived as important. The completely different set of people. And while I'm not one to be real nostalgic, I do think that this is pretty darn cool and really helps validate the information. Going to jump down again in the interest of time, because I know you have other sessions to get to, the whys of why we're doing this and why we care so much about supplier diversity. We really wanted to solve those problems for who became our friends in terms of the supplier diversity professionals, to be able to justify the impact of supplier diversity on the bottom line, to be able to negotiate for more budget, larger team size, and ability to be able to do a lot more with supplier diversity, but also to elevate the conversation. So what Jessica from Target was saying in terms of data being the language of corporations, to give supplier diversity that language to be able to have those conversations and to bridge to other divisions. So maybe it's marketing who needs to see the numbers to be able to do a targeted social media outreach campaign. Maybe it's to D&I, and certainly it's upwards to whether it be procurement or the C-suites or whoever, to understand the power of supplier diversity. And then of course, strategize. Now, our graphics person is fantastic, and she put these magical blue waves, which I have, it was sort of coincidental, and it made my heart sing in terms of the blue wave that hopefully is coming. With the information, again, we're able to look at data. Unfortunately, the video is not going to work on this, but what I can tell you for our clients that have this, they're able to slice and dice the information by any demographic that they might want to look at. So if we were, which the video would do if we weren't having tech issues, we could look at, let's say, African-American women who I want to listen to in every possible way at this moment. What we would see is that African-American women are much more likely than the general population to think that supplier diversity is important, want to work at places that have a supplier diversity initiative, and have a higher awareness. If we could show you the combination that looked at urban dwellers who are working, who have children, and who are educated, that'd show you that awareness jumps to 11% for that particular group of people. So this is where the strategy comes in terms of what a particular company is trying to do with their supplier diversity initiative. I'm going to wrap in the interest of hopefully having some questions and try and keep us as close to time. But these are really the 4 metrics that we want you to know and kind of universally start to use, even if being a part of the Supplier Diversity Impact Indicator is not possible at this point. The high level impact on purchase in aggregate, and the importance that the consumers feel about supplier diversity and diversity initiatives. With that, if we still have time, I'm happy to take any questions.
We have plenty of time, so, you know.
Okay. Fantastic. I see it looks like James's question of considering doing this again soon, given the protests and growing awareness and the need to support minority-owned businesses. James, that's a great question. We cannot wait to do this study next year to look at the impact of the importance of diversity. What we want to do is actively use what we have in this particular time, but there's so much more that can be done in terms of understanding the impact of supporting minority-owned businesses. I think the right answer with this would be to take a qualitative approach to really understand the psychology of consumer decisions at this moment in time, rather than what this is, which is a quantitative approach, which is trackable year over year. Who was the study funded by? Thank you for that question. The way that we have designed this is to allow multiple brands to opt in to be able to get the depth and breadth of their particular information, and it drives the price point down. And so a typical custom market research study with this amount of information probably would cost about $50,000, which we know is out of the question for supplier diversity budgets at this moment in time. But when we're using this information, hopefully those budgets will grow and there'll be more money to support CGLCC and MSDC and all of the others. So right now, it's a standardized tool that allows multiple brands to opt in at a fairly low price point. Great question about the promoting awareness to the population about supplier diversity. The companies that have this information right now, in depth, specific to their particular companies, are integrating it with their corporation strategy. So that might be understanding a specific target market for a particular product, and then being able to maybe do a targeted social media campaign. We certainly have seen one or two commercials. Southwest Airlines ran an article in their magazine. Obviously, this was about last year, I think, or maybe a little bit before. Any other way that you would create awareness and connection to your brand, there can be an integrated diversity or supplier diversity message. Christine, I'm only able to read a few of these, but if there's some that you see that you'd like to read out, I want to be sure I get to all of them.
Kiruba, we do not have stats on Canada. This is just US data right now. However, we hope to expand soon.
I'm going to read Brian Hall's question, and Christine, just scan them for me if there's any more that I've missed. I think that there are. Hi, Brian. Good to see you. How does your work connect to or influence young entrepreneurs programs that attract more diversity, especially young Black women? I'm going to respond specifically in what we're talking about, which is the SDII, or the impact of supplier diversity on a brand's business case. We certainly could tackle that question from a custom standpoint. But in this, we're able to then, with that dynamic tool that we looked at, which is this right-hand side, with all of those dashboards, we're able to go look at young Black women, young entrepreneurs, and really see how all of these metrics, not just this one dashboard that we're looking at right now, I think there's 6 dashboards that come with this, really to be able to understand any combination of group that you want to look at.
From Steve Tower, for you, Stephanie, do you think there's a growing corporate awareness connection between the diversity of the employee base, the customer base, and the supplier base?
Wonderful. There is an ability with this, and we have this information to be able to look at what people think is driving their perception of a brand as valuing diversity. So we're able to drill down and say, okay, for this particular brand, for the people who perceive it to be one that values diversity, we can drill down into why. And then that also might go into the strategy for how this information gets used in those conversations. Bill Hooker, did you see my question? I'm going to look for it right now.
Was there a question posed for those that are considering supplier diversity programming post-COVID?
Hopefully that was the right question. The post-COVID, the reason we did this post-COVID was to be able to arm supplier diversity professionals for potentially difficult economic conversations that might have been coming. As it relates to COVID, we're not going to be doing another study just yet because it is intended to be annual, and you would want it to be annual at this particular point in time. For those considering post-COVID, I don't know if you're allowed to come on video or come on video and help explain that. I'm not sure I fully understand. So please reach out and we will be sure we get that correct.
Another question is, did you identify the best way to get the 4% of general public awareness up?
Yeah, it's specific to corporate. It's going to be specific to your corporation, your marketing team, your outreach. Really, we've seen targeted social media. We've seen conversations about larger integration with any sort of messaging, whether it be online advertising, whether it be magazines, brochures, websites, job listings. One of the other elements that we're able to look at is the impact of any particular subgroup that we want to analyze on the desire to work with a particular corporation that has a supplier diversity initiative. So one minor strategy might be incorporating communication about the supplier diversity initiative to the groups that we know that it will be matter for.
From Brendan, how has your research shown evidence of greater supply chain resilience in light of COVID-19 or otherwise?
Has our research, I'm reading it now, has shown evidence of greater supply chain resilience in light. I can tell you that there is a group working on a Harvard Business Review article on the importance of supplier diversity in the supply chain in the economic and social recovery that we're going to be looking at least down here. So I believe that there is the belief in the importance of supplier diversity in that role. Forbes did an article recently about UPS's use of the SDII, and also was looking at it to solidify their supply chain and grow it.
And then clarification from Bill. So he's interested in knowing if companies are still as interested in supplier diversity programming as they were before the pandemic.
Oh, thanks, Bill. That's helpful. We have no indication that there was a drop, given that we did this particular year's study pre and post COVID for different reasons, but there was not a drop, as you saw with those metrics, in terms of interest. We haven't done a qualitative study of that to really look at the thinking behind starting supplier diversity initiatives, but we certainly think that there's a heck of a lot of information supporting all of the great work that all of you are doing, and hopefully can continue to do to grow this amazing thing called supplier diversity.
So far, that's all the questions.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for being patient with the tech issues on the back end. Christine, will you take a look at the new one from Catherine? But we're super grateful if you have to drop off to your next session.
So Catherine is asking to confirm our numbers. Are you saying that those asked to participate, 4% did not know what SD was? So would it be fair to say 96% knew what SD was, and the 4%, 62% agree that SD program is important?
Okay, let me just take a stab at that. Yeah, we'll go here. What we're saying, and thank you for that question. I know I get so excited about this. I get going pretty quick, and could keep going for hours. For those of you that know me, could go into all of the details and how it can be used. What we're saying is that 4% of consumers in the U.S., so of the U.S. population, 4% know what supplier diversity is. 96% do not know. However, 61% think that it's important that corporations value diversity. So our hypothesis is that there's a heck of a lot of percentage between 4 and 61% that are quite likely to have the same type of response with a supplier diversity message and be open to that awareness in terms of their purchase behavior. So actually purchasing products, considering, and then a positive brand favorability because of awareness of supplier diversity, and being able to link how supplier diversity can impact the overall perception of the corporation as valuing diversity. Those numbers are consistently incredible as well. Yeah, please connect offline, and certainly there are certain folks who are using this tool who have expressed an interest and a willingness to talk to any other supplier diversity professionals who want to talk about it. So I think it might even be better than hearing from us about how people are using it than from hearing from your peers. And when and if we all have the chance to be in person again, we'll hopefully be co-presenting with a few of the folks who are actually using this information, because at a certain point, no one wants to hear from the researcher, and you want to hear from the folks who are using it. All right, please feel free to reach out. We're here. We love this topic. We love supplier diversity. We're so grateful for everything that's done for us, and we're grateful for our small part in helping to elevate that conversation and hopefully get all of you more budget in time. Have a wonderful day. Thank you, Deborah. Appreciate you.